Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about idea generation to launch of an email productivity SaaS in less than 6 weeks. Today, we have our guest, Mohit Mamoria, joining us. Mohit, who describes himself as a serial maker, is the CEO of Mailman, an email management solution that minimizes interruptions and increases productivity. Mohit is a serial entrepreneur, writing software since he was 11 years old, and actually founded his first company when he was still in college. So welcome, Mohit. Super excited to have you on SaaS District Show today.
Hey, thank you so much, Akil. So stoked to be here.
Awesome. So we always like to start off, just a quick, can you share a little bit, quick background, past position, ventures, up until funding, and, running Mailman as the CEO today?
So you want to know before Mailman? My life before Mailman? Okay, fantastic. So I've been one of those people who did not have friends. So most of my time I spent with computers, and that's where I got into internet and building products and businesses, online businesses. My very first business was very simple. In college, I used to build websites for money. That was what I used to do. And it gave us some little extra pocket money, nothing more than that. But then I did my internship at a company where I realized the power of building products. I was employee number 3 over there. And what I built over 2 months, it was immediately used the very next day by hundreds and thousands of people. And that also grew the revenue of the company by twofold. It was still an early stage startup. But that was a big enlightenment for me. When the entire company is just working on one thing, it was never like hunting for new projects to do. Just one thing you build, and that's changed the trajectory of my career. That my boss over there became my first investor when I told him, "Hey, I want to do something like this. This is my idea." That was my first proper startup. I ventured many things before that, but that was my first proper startup, which was a SaaS startup, accounting for small businesses in India, online accounting, which was not available then. That was my business. I ran it for a year. I gave up too soon. It was doing fantastic. We had 300, 400 paying customers. But those were the days when Facebook was raising hundreds of millions of dollars. And I was thinking, where am I going with these 300 paying customers? Nowhere. I might be doing something wrong, and I might be onto something, but really a small business, not really a startup. So I gave it up on that too soon. But my next company, I did something which was very suited for that kind of journey, where you raise money, you get millions of users, and then you sell it to somebody else. That was my proper journey. This company was called Hauntel. It went on for 3 to 4 years. The end of this company gave me a little bit of stability, gave me time to venture, gave me time to think, what do I want to do next? And what I did next was just spoke to multiple entrepreneurs, and invested in the companies as an angel investor. So for 2 years, I just did that, investing in other startups. From my fund, I raised a small fund, $2 million. I started investing in small startups, so small check, just at my level, in these startups. And also majority of them was crypto startups. I was one of those who wrote one article that went viral, and then a lot of people got to know me. Hey, this guy, if nothing else, at least knows the technology. So let's take a small check from him if he can help with some advices. So that was my journey before Mailman. But I got very bored of just investing. That was the day I realized it. I remember it is early 2020. I realized I am a maker. I am not satisfied unless I'm making something. So I just got to. So I stopped just investing. I still do investing just passively now. That is not my full-time thing now. But I wanted to start building something, and because I was doing these investments and everything, my inbox was always flooded. So my biggest distraction was my inbox. So to find time, distraction-free time and focus zone to build something new, I wrote this very tiny script, just a script in my Gmail, which paused my inbox for 4 hours. So basically this script would collect all the emails, incoming emails, but do not show it to me right away. It would collect all of these emails and show it to me every 4 hours. So for 4 hours, I would have totally focused time, and I was using this script to hunt good business ideas to pursue. So this is something that had been, and I was doing it for multiple months. I built 2-3 products, small products. All of them failed. But this script was very interesting. Then what happened was in February, I saw one tweet by Andrew Wilkinson of Tiny. He was asking to have very similar thing built for his Gmail. He wanted to achieve something very similar in his Gmail. A friend of mine shared that tweet with me. I immediately sent the script, a video, the script, and how to use the script to him, a link to the script. And he saw the video and he said, do you want to build this as a business? And that was the time it struck me. I was using the script to hunt for ideas, but all this while, the script itself could be the business. This was the blind spot that Andrew helped me uncover. So we chatted for a couple of days to finally finalize what could the product be like, what could be the features, how would we position, what do we need to build this out, come to a deal, and then finally we shook our hands and then we started building. From February, that email that I sent, the first version of the product was out in about 1.5 months. And we started getting users. The best part was Andrew was my partner and is my partner still. The best part was he has a huge Twitter following, which is the target audience. Entrepreneurs, founders, investors. So when he told to the world about this tool that we are building, tons of people signed up. That's how we got the first initial set of users, and then it was like then it was what any typical SaaS founder would do: talk to these customers, learn more about these customers, build more things, and then ask these customers to refer more customers. So that was the cycle you have. So basically, this is. I don't think this was the short form, but yeah, this is the summarized version of my career so far.
No, that's good. I think you answered a couple of questions I had, but I just want to kind of go back to that one product which you mentioned. You were working with a startup at the time. You built a product for them, and you noticed that it basically doubled the revenue, got all these users. Was that by mistake or luck, or was it you actually did some market research, or did your team do it and say, hey, this is what we think our market needs, or we can try and develop it? Or was this something you developed and then just happened to blow up, and you were just right place, right time, and you built something cool and realized that?
Okay, so just a correction. The product that I built, this was not my idea. Idea was the founders. I just built the product within the company. So the company is called 91mobiles.com, 91 numericals, mobiles.com. So it allows you to compare and research among various gadgets. So if you are planning to buy a laptop, you can actually compare and contrast various laptops in front of you and eventually make a good buying decision. That is the company. One of their customers, which is a gadget blog, gadget magazine, they asked something from them. They said, what if there could be an embeddable widget that we paste just one line and this widget automatically identifies what this blog post is talking about, and then fetches the real-time prices and compares all the real-time prices available across all the online stores, and then shows a buy now button within our review blog post. Is it possible? So the company was small. They were ready to pay money to build something like this, and we had the data. We just needed one more interface, which is an embeddable widget. So this embeddable widget, so the need came directly from the customers, not my idea, but I was solely available. I was solely accountable to build this thing from scratch. So to me, it was just another project. But when they embedded this widget, and when I saw the numbers in the backend, they were like hundreds and thousands of impressions, and the widget was working 90% of the time, and people were actually clicking buy now in that widget and actually making the purchase, which directly meant improving the bottom line of our company. This journey, which is build something in 2 months, which is really valuable, see it getting used, and then see the bank account getting money. This was magical. This experience was magical, and I was, I think, only 21 that time. So looking at this circle was something that took me by storm. It shook me, and then I was able to visualize many things that are possible with internet.
Interesting how people think, it's always complex features, problems that you have to solve to be able to see, make a big impact and make that huge impact on the bottom line and growth. But sometimes that simple widget that could be done in 2 weeks doesn't mean that more time you spend on it, the more bigger problem you're solving. So interesting that you're able to see
Absolutely.
that. And when it comes to Mailman, where are you guys in terms of size today? MRR, team size, and can you talk about in terms of like how much you actually raised, or the term sheet, or any details you can share around how that was structured with Andrew at Tiny Capital?
Fantastic. Yes. Let me try to be as much as informative as possible without revealing a few things, because we have not raised any money, but we are in middle of some conversations that we are doing. So here's the thing. It started out as just a one-man army company, which was me doing development, customer support, a little bit of marketing, everything. But then we had a lot of help from some of Tiny Portfolio's agencies. So Tiny Capital also has some agencies in their portfolio. So we had a lot of help with design and UI UX from one of their agencies called Z1. Then we had a lot of help with digital marketing from, I don't think this is in this agency is part of the portfolio, but they're very close friend of Tiny Capital. They have helped other companies. This is called Pilot House. They helped us with a little bit of marketing in the initial days. Right now, the total team size is now 2. So we have finally hired a full-time marketing person to bring. So this year, slowly, we are bringing in these outsourced things, design and marketing, slowly in-house to control the cost, also to get more value out of them. Basically, I'm in India. You can have much more value by hiring somebody in India. You can get much more value by hiring somebody in India versus paying an agency in some other country in the West. So that's what we are doing, just optimizing a little bit of cost, optimizing the value for the company. Right now we are 2 people. We have thousands of users, mostly thanks to Andrew Wilkinson's Twitter account. Most of the people came in from there. Also, he is followed by many influencers himself. So when they signed up, they also tweeted about it, and then that was a little bit of flywheel that went in the first 6 months. So we got thousands of users. Right now we are standing just over 7,000 users, and most of them came from Twitter. One thing that really didn't work until now, and I am being open and totally vulnerable about it on public platform, is the paid marketing. Word of mouth is working, organic reach is working, but paid marketing. Whenever we try to be greedy, hey, we have a funnel, this user journey works, let's spend $10,000 on this and get more customers. That traffic is still not converting well. So this is one thing that we are still struggling, and we are still trying to figure it out. But except that one challenge, I think a lot of pieces are like in this machinery are well oiled. We are slowly building team. Now we are also hiring a couple of more developers so that I can, instead of just building out stuff, I can also look at slightly bigger picture. I can tell you our mission, our vision with the product now. It is not just about email productivity. It is about something much bigger than just email productivity for next few years now that we have. And we learned all of this only after talking to these, not all, but first 400 and 450 customers that we had.
Wow. Just to kind of add to that point, so you're saying that you did some paid marketing. Can you be specific? Was that Google AdWords, Facebook, or what kind of what paid are you talking about there?
Everything. So I'm talking about Facebook ads, Google ads, Twitter ads, Quora ads, LinkedIn ads. I'm talking about everything. And
in conversion, you mean not to free users, or they are signing up as free users and not paying?
Oh, free users are coming in. So free users are coming in hundreds. But so I'll tell you one learning. You do not agree that your inbox is a problem unless I convince you that it is a problem. So that is not a problem that you are already aware of. Going through your inbox feels like work, and overflowing inbox means more productive day, more work. It feels like something is happening, which more or less is like running on a treadmill. Unless your job is to just manage inbox. this awareness is something that is missing. Why? So people are not looking for a solution for this problem. They're not looking at to solve the problem of the overflowing inbox. Majority of them. Some are, not most of them. So you have to first tell them that this is a problem. And this is the gap. So people search for something like, how do I block this spammer? How do I block these lottery ticket emails? They search like this. But Mailman is not just a tool to block spammers. It is a tool to give you more productive workflow with your inbox. So this disconnect, people do sign up. They do sign up, but because they were looking for something transactional, they can sign up, they can block something, they can be on their way. Not something which is not transactional, but it's like building a new relationship with your inbox. So that is a disconnect which is not working well with the paid traffic. But whenever somebody tweets about us, because they write their journey and their experience with the tweet, that converts fantastic. I mean, we have seen over 20% conversions from just free sign up to paying customers just because they came from a recommendation. So now we are actually saying, what if we do not do any paid advertising at all? What if we just incentivize our users to refer more users with their stories?
Right.
So this is one of the very recent learnings, and this is one of those things that we are doing this quarter.
Love it. Makes sense. Before getting more into the growth, and we'll chat a little bit more on that marketing kind of case studies and what worked and what didn't. So Andrew, he had a pretty specific problem to solve, and he said, I want to build a specific solution for him. He's just one person, but wasn't necessarily like define the best business model around. So how did you saw that tweet, you positioned it to him. What was the process of defining like the how and the why of this project when you showed him that video?
Okay, so I would not have written him an email if I was not using the script myself. Again, the same thing. If I was unaware of this problem, I would have discounted his problem. So that problem is very precise. Only people who feel that. So this is kind of a realization that one has to have in their life. When they think inbox is not work, this is one realization. Everybody is talking about inbox zero, which means in our head, we believe getting to inbox zero means getting something productive done, which is sometimes it is the case. Sometimes it is not the case. But when you realize, hey, this is not the case, I still have more things to do. There's some creative work that I have to do. There's some other things that I have to do, which is apart from this admin work, which is apart from this inbox management. This realization is very important. I had this realization because my inbox started flooding when I was investing before Mailman. And Andrew had this realization. And I'm sure a lot of people would not have written him an email just because most people did not have that realization. Only because I had that script, I sent him the video and he said, fantastic. He asked me for a link. I sent him the link. The link didn't work because this is an unverified script. So for any script to work with Gmail, either you have to be the author of the script or somebody has to be within the organization of the script. And Google does it for the security purposes. So he was not able to use the script, but then we were like, this is a potentially good solution. Why don't we invest some time and money into building this up? So he said, why don't you invest your time? I invest my money and let's take it to 0 to 1. These are the agencies you can use for the design and everything. Use whatever you want. Just take it from 0 to 1 and then we'll see how it works. We took it from 0 to 1. Our email list for the launch, for the pre-launch was phenomenal. He tweeted out a thread and from there about 7,000 people came in. And over next few months, I onboarded them personally. Out of them, about 1,000 people started using it. They became paying customers. But after that, it was just these about 1,000 people who started telling about Mailman to their friends and families. And these were, and remember, this is the time when COVID was just happening. So people were working from home and they were dealing with email and Slack overload.
Right.
So all the meetings moved to inbox. So this was a time when people are like, how do I manage my inbox? Now, again, this was the first instinct that they said, now my inbox is not my work. because more things are happening besides my normal inbox just because of this lockdown and working from home. So these people started telling about Mailman to these other people, and more people came in. But after that, lockdown became the normal thing. That kind of went down. That's when we said, okay, now we need to figure out something else, because that word of mouth kind of have died out. Now word of mouth is still happening. People are still tweeting about us, but that it is not at that scale now. It is not at that scale now. So now we have to. So if you look at that Paul Graham's trajectory of a startup, we are like Trove of Sorrow, where we are figuring out how to do, what to do. We are also, to be very honest, we are also questioning, is this the only market? I mean, what if the market itself is very small? But then whenever I talk to some new users, I get to know the market is not small, because there are so many users of ours who are just independent Shopify e-commerce business owners. They just have a Shopify store, but one popular Shopify store is driving them nuts, because one Shopify store sends you so many notifications and their inbox gets drowned. So I just imagine, hey, there'll be hundreds and thousands of popular Shopify stores. So market is definitely not small. We just have to reach to the right audience in right manner. That is the right current challenge. Yes.
Right. So just trying to figure out, I guess, product market fit and seeing who's the right kind of user that you need to focus, the right ICP, and who you guys need to really scale.
Yes.
So just kind of understand. So you guys launched. You said so. You launched. You had the script. Maybe you said about 6 weeks after. You talked to Andrew, and it's been a success so far, right? 7,000 plus users.
Yes.
Would you say that's still the right amount of time needed to launch effectively? Like, and or would you go back and do things any differently if you could redo it right now?
Just for the launch.
For the launch, and would you want to build more features into it? Would you done something differently? Would you done anything else to get it out?
I was very happy with the launch, honestly. One thing that I might do differently is launch on multiple platforms. So, for example, we launched on Andrew's Twitter and Product Hunt. These two communities. But now if I have to build something, I would actually start building up a profile, a community, say on Indie Hackers, Hacker News. I would do something like this. Instead of saying, hey, we built something, I would say, hey, I'm building something and this is the process. Follow along on this journey. I think this is the only thing that I would do differently. Instead of saying after 6 weeks, this is the thing, I would like to take a few people along with me on this 6-week journey with me. I think, but it's not something that I regret. I think it's a learning that I have learned for future launches. But one thing I would do differently is after the launch, when we had 7,000, 8,000 plus long email list, I would handle that email list slightly differently. Instead of directly sending them an invite on a rolling basis, I would actually start building a conversation with them. I would send them an invite on email number 3. I would first ask them how they use their inbox, so that I could tailor the invite and tailor the benefit that they can get out of Mailman. Because we had some features, but we said the one same constant thing to everybody, instead of even realizing what is the problem that they're trying to solve. So the only thing that I would do different is what I did after the launch.
So how you kind of position those conversations and the nurturing of helping you define your model a little better. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yes. So especially the beta users. I mean, especially the beta users.
Would you consider all those beta users?
I mean, beta users I consider those no, not all of them. I mean, beta users. So beta users are the users who signed up for the pre-launch list, and then they got an invite, and then they signed up. Those are like 1,000 in the total user base. Everybody else came in after the launch. I mean, through Product Hunt and word of mouth.
Got it. So a little bit on the risk side here, right? So you built the email tool. It's built on top of an email service, right? Don't you see the risk or constraint of being dependent on another platform? Like, aren't you worried that Gmail may just create this functionality and make Mailman completely obsolete? I've seen this before happen, by the way, with another tool similar as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a case. But let me tell you one thing. I mean, Gmail is now the status quo of email. I mean, there are tons of email clients and email plugins which are built on top of Gmail, and we are not unique. I mean, we are not doing something that is that nobody else is doing in some or the other way. There are other tools which do 10% of what we do, 20% of what we do, but they do different manner. So we are not afraid that Gmail might shut us, but there is definitely one. I would not say fear, but there is one risk. Risk is we are building in somebody else's playground. They can, and when you do this, a lot of time you're positioned as just a feature, not really a product. So when you're positioned as a feature, there is a perceived risk that this feature can be built by Google itself or another email client themselves. This is a risk, but I'm not too afraid of it. I'll tell you why. Because our biggest conversion story narrative is that we do not ask a lot of behavior change on the user's part. So for example, if you look, if you go out and try a new email service or a new email client, you have to use a new email client. You have to download a new app. You have to get used to its user interface. You have to get used to its functionality. You might pay for it, you might not pay for it, but there's a behavior change. If you sign up for a new email service, then you have to let go of your Google Calendar, these integrations. So basically the Google ecosystem. So we know the user is greatly imbibed with the Google ecosystem and their tools. How can we give the same value? How can we give same value without asking for too much of change in the behavior of the user? So that's why we so this is the reason how we are different and why these other risks do not really worry us. We are so simple to use, but when you start using us, as a founder, you want your users to be invested in your product. But when you start using us, you start telling Mailman, hey, this is a good email, this is a bad email, this is a good email, this is a bad email. When you do this, Mailman learns about your inbox. And so the more you use our product, the more Mailman learns and more value you get out of it. We do not sell this data. We do not do anything with the data. We do not even see this data. We do not even store this data, your inbox data. We directly charge you money for it. But your inbox gets better and better and better when you use Mailman more and more, which means there will be a point, not immediately, there might be a point in the future where we can build more features around it, or maybe even an entire email client eventually. So that's why we are not really worried, because we are not doing something exceptionally different that Gmail strictly does not allow us to do. We have taken Gmail's permission to do whatever we are doing. Google has verified us, authenticated us. Hey, okay, you can do it. So that's why we are not worried. And even if they build the feature, we have some interesting information about users' inbox behavior. Because all our users have told us what are good emails and what are bad emails in their inboxes.
Got it. So once they have that, that somebody's system behind it working to help them, it becomes a little bit more valuable versus just Gmail, Yeah. And so just a little bit more about on the marketing growth side. So you guys talked about, word of mouth, referrals worked really well. Twitter worked really well. All these ads you didn't work. Anything else that, you would say that you would like to try, let's say top of the funnel, because you're saying, the referral side, which is, kind of after the activation phase, and, they're happy with their experience and they're sharing that word of mouth. That's amazing. You have the virality kind of coefficient working for you. So, your product is well worth it. Anything else that you have in mind for, top of the funnel that could kind of drive more?
We have a couple of things going on. So I told you that the biggest problem is the realization, the awareness of the problem itself.
Okay, yeah.
So we realized, let's not market the solution. Let's market the problem. So what we are doing now is we are building new campaigns, and these campaigns are not images or just tweets. These are videos. So we are making videos which are 30-second long. Do you remember those ads, Mac versus PC? We are making exactly those videos, idle life versus real life. So idle life is something where, so I'll give you an example. So idle life is something a person shows up, they say, I woke up, had my breakfast, checked my inbox. When they say check my inbox, somebody hands them 4 envelopes, they look at them, they're done with it. This is ideal life. But real life, hey, I woke up, had my breakfast, checked my inbox. They do this, but instead of getting handed 4 envelopes, thousands of envelopes fall on their head. It's like, this is what real life inbox looks like. Whenever you wake up from a good night's sleep, you know there are 25 emails waiting for you in your inbox, and most of them you just have to either mark as read or just archive. Just so we are building these small videos just to bring awareness about the problem. We are not even marketing the solution yet, and then after the video we just say, Mailman, bringing one step closer to your ideal life. I mean, there are so many other things wrong with compared to ideal life, but just one step closer to ideal life. So this is one of the experiments that we are doing this quarter, investing a little bit of money and resources in making the videos. Let's see how that goes.
I like it. It's like, hey, this is, maybe you right now before going to the gym. This is you after. This is your results. Yes. I mean, you don't have to go to our gym. You don't need to follow our plan, but this is a real thing that can happen to you. Makes sense.
Exactly. Yes.
Talking about productivity, you also have the Mailman podcast. So you should talk about productivity. Seems pretty obvious, but can you talk a little bit, what are some unconventional email productivity tips, maybe some hacks that are some of our SaaS founders and companies that could help them get back more time for them?
I'm trying to think of email productivity that is not directly a feature that Mailman offers. I mean, honestly, if I'll be very honest, my biggest productivity tip was when I wrote that script, which would just do one thing, which would not block spam, nothing. It would do just one thing, give me 4 hours of focus time. I mean, no new email coming in. So biggest productivity. So the best way to reach inbox zero is not even let emails come in the first place. This was my breakthrough. Just allowing when I'm ready to do emails. Otherwise, because of these phones and everything, your email notifications are always behind you. They are always chasing you. I can show you one thing. I mean, I don't know if this will be part of the recording, but I can share my screen and show you one thing. I was just doing some analysis of my email activity before I started using Mailman and after I started using Mailman. I can send you these graphics afterwards if you want. But sure. If you want, I can share the screen and show it to you as well right now.
Or you know what we can do is you can send us a link. We can include it in our show notes. If you can show us like a little video, and then our users can check that out if that's cool.
Yes, yeah? I'll do that. So you will see. So what I did was I just read all the email activity before Mailman, and I plotted them on the bar of 24 hours. How my day looked like with emails, and it was like my 24 hours were filled with emails. But then then I took last 365 days. This bar was like emails, nothing, nothing. Just when I saw that visual a few weeks back, I was just doing this with this visualization. When I saw this visual, I was like, oh God, this is the trick. This is the trick to get focus time, not to do anything else. Labeling everything. All of this takes time. All of these are active things that you have to do. You have to remember to do these things. But if you just make your inbox so that it delivers your emails every 4 hours or every 6 hours or every 2 hours, whatever your preferred schedule is, then you have those 2 hours, 4 hours just to do everything else except email.
Yeah, I'm a big fan myself of using an app called Flow app on my Mac, and that's the same thing. Is I actually have to function in there where I block email, block Slack notifications for during that time where I'm in flow, right? So I'm working on something more productive. I block out those apps. Even if I try click on it, it just blocks me out because that's your habit of just clicking and checking. And then when I'm ready, but still when I'm back on my break, I see 10 more emails. I still have to deal with it. So
Absolutely.
Any other kind of general maybe productivity hacks or routines you recommend to say new founders? Maybe they're looking to maximize their output, help them make better decisions or boost productivity while running a company.
I'll tell you one, which is I'm fan of those productivity hacks or tips which are passive, which once you do it, you set it and forget it. If you have to do it actively, it's a habit building thing. It's not really a trick. So another trick is last year, so many new newsletters came in. We have shared our email across on the internet much more times in the last year than ever before. So what has happened is a lot of emails are just circulating around, and all somebody needs to send you an email is your email address. So one hack is just create a filter in your Gmail or any inbox, any email service with the word unsubscribe. So any email which contains the word unsubscribe, automatically remove it from your inbox and move it to another folder, say newsletters or marketing or anything. So this is one folder that you will check whenever you want to check, not actively. So you will only get, say, important emails in your inbox. Everything which has the word unsubscribe will be moved to this inbox that you can check once in a day or twice in a day. Again, a passive trick, just once, set it and forget it. And honestly, this is one logic that we used in the first version of Mailman. So when we wanted to figure out, hey, which are important emails and which are non-important emails, we were looking for just unsubscribe word in the email. If it has unsubscribe word, we would say it is not important. If it didn't have unsubscribe word, we would say, hey, this is important to you. So this is one of the logic that we actually built in Mailman. Now it's a much complex logic now, but yes, this is something you can accomplish using just your inbox filters.
No, that's genius. I used to use an app before. I think they shut down. It was called, I think, Rollup. And I loved it because it would just take all those things that I'll subscribe to and unsubscribe me. And then now I have to do them. I am doing them manually. It's like I come in, I unsubscribe from everything. So that's brilliant. I'm going to do that today. So thank you for that tip, Mohit.
Yes, fantastic.
Awesome. So Mohit, just want to switch gears, kind of moving more to kind of the rapid fire, maybe a little bit more personal questions to help founders listening in.
Okay.
Starting off, what's one piece of advice you wish you had known and maybe would tell your 18-year-old self or maybe college grad before launching your product?
Okay. One thing, do not have plans for 2 years, 3 years. My biggest learning was either to plan for 6 weeks or 60 years, nothing in between. And planning for 6 weeks had been working great for anything that I have done, building products, building teams, trying out new marketing ideas. 6 weeks is kind of the sweet spot that I figured out myself. Not quarter, not month, 6 week, either plan for 6 weeks or 60 years, nothing in between. Just keep an eye on the bigger picture and then do small incremental stuff in 6 weeks.
Love it. What are some of the biggest challenges you're currently facing in order to continue to grow Mailman? Meaning, what's keeping you up at night these days?
Same thing, marketing, positioning. We are still trying to figure out the positioning for the paid traffic. I mean, if somebody is not even looking for us, how do I grab somebody's attention and make them aware of this problem and then also pitch the solution? This is a threefold problem. We are trying multiple things. Hopefully one of them will work soon enough. But yes, our current challenge and our biggest challenge right now.
Nice. Who or what would you say are the best 3 resources? It could be books, it could be people, mentors, or people you follow. I'm assuming Andrew is in there, who you say have been the most instrumental to your success over these last few years. Outside of Andrew, maybe anybody else or any books you recommend?
Yes. One book that had been sort of like a Bible to me of building a company is this book called Hard Thing About Hard Things. I read this book when I was young, 23-year-old guy, and I had to hire people like who were 30-year-old, 35-year-old. There was no resource who would tell me how to hire people who are senior to you, who are older to you. I hired some of my friends. There was no other resource who would tell how to fire your friends. So these are things that book told me. There are specific chapters. So Hard Thing About Hard Things is one thing that I reread every single year. And every time I do it, I get something out of it. Talking about person, I would give all of the credit of my vulnerability discussions, apart from Andrew, to Bharni. Bharni is the founder and CEO of this company called 91mobiles.com, an Indian company. My first boss, my first investor, my lifetime mentor. There had been times when I have cried in front of him, and there had been times when I have spoken more just about like beyond business with him. And why I like talking to him is because he has never given me any answers. So this is interesting because whenever I went to him with questions, he has always asked me more questions so that I get more clarity about myself, which nobody else did. Nobody else did. Everybody tried to give me answers. Everybody tried to give me direction. But this one person tried to point all of these questions back at me so that I can figure out who I am really. So that was my biggest achievement, that I was able to meet somebody like him who would make me realize who I am.
Right. Love it. Love it. We'll add him add those to the show notes for people to check out, maybe say hi.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mohit, you've had different kind of levels of success, from an investor to founder to entrepreneur, now kind of another journey back into the game. What does success mean to you today? whether that's personally, financially, business, life. There's no right answer.
Yeah. Okay. So, I wrote this one word in my Twitter bio, which is serial maker, that I love making stuff. So, maker is okay, but, and serial is okay, politically correct. But in all honesty, I am something that I like to call parallel maker. I mean, I need to have multiple things going on to keep me occupied. And while I'm doing all of this stuff, I am always coming up with new ideas. Right now, I'm not able to execute all of those ideas on my own because I do not have enough resources. I do not have enough people that I'm working with that I can execute those ideas. And it's not that I want to execute those ideas. I just want to see those ideas executed, even if failed. I just want to put those ideas to rest. Over the last few years, that list has grown too big. It's like 50 plus ideas now. And success to me looks like, and right now I'm able to execute a few of them using some developers, by hiring some contractors. I'm able to put some of those ideas to rest just by executing them and seeing if they're working or not. My success to me would look like if an idea comes up, the time that it takes me to execute that idea and put it to rest, either up or down, either throw away or pursue it. Not personally, but this idea should be pursued. So in that context, that would be success to me. And over the last few years, that gap is actually shortening. I mean, earlier I used to spend months and months just thinking about ideas and not doing about anything because I was not able to. Right now, if I have some ideas, 10% of them I'm actually able to get it executed and see if there is any potential in it or not. But I want to be there where at least 80% of the ideas I can actually put it to test, see if it is worth pursuing or not. See Elon Musk, crazy idea, he gets somebody to work, and if it is dud, he throws it away. If it is working, he has a new company. I do not want to own all of these companies, but just want to see those executions happening.
Nice. Do you have, just adding to that, do you have a kind of sweet, kind of figured out timeline of how long, from idea to launch to figure it out, get it out there and then making a decision in or out? Or is this, I'm glad it's out, it's not working, I'm glad it's done? Or should we continue doubling down? What's the right metrics or things you look at to make that decision?
Just for me, it's 100 days. I mean, 100 days, I think, is a good enough time that you can take, you can do anything with the idea. 100 days is like the top upper limit. If something is still not working after 100 days, like if there's zero hope of possibility, I would just think practically and I would move on.
So 6 weeks if you have Andrew, 100 days if you're on your own. How much are you investing? How much time are you putting into that in those 100 days? How much would you invest? Where would you invest
100 days.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, 100 days, you're just doing one thing, just taking this idea and either saying this is a hit or this is a miss. Just doing this. This is for somebody who is just looking for ideas and trying to do something.
Nice.
I would say instead of waiting for a long period of time just to find the perfect idea, do 10 ideas. As they say, 9 out of 10 startups fail. So the only way to make a successful startup is to do 10 startups because one of them will succeed. So the whole point is how quickly you do those 10 startups.
Okay, so let's just do the quick math there. So you can do, 100, even if you just focus on one. People take 3 years just to finally execute because they get stuck in their head. You can do 3 in a year, and in 3 years, if the numbers are just against you, you should be a success, right? So keep going.
You should have something. You should have something to pursue for next 10 years. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Love it. That's golden, Mohit. Appreciate it. This has been great, Mohit. Really appreciate chatting with you. Final question: Where can our founders get in touch with you, learn more about you, Mailman, and kind of anything else they want to chat about?
Fantastic. Okay, so I am more active on my Twitter account. It's Mohit Mamoria, my first name and my last name, MOHIT MAMORIA. That's my username. That is where I'm most active. I reply to all of the DMs. Everything, my DMs are open. The second best place to get hold of me, and if it's something really personal or like little lengthy in context, is my email. It's mohit@mailmanhq.com. But word of warning over there, I have Mailman protecting my inbox. So usually it takes between 24 to 48 hours to respond to any first-time sender.
I wouldn't expect anything less. I've got you here following you right now. So
fantastic.
Hope to follow your tweets. Thank you so much. We'll add those to our show notes if you guys want to follow Mohit on Twitter. Check him out, Mohit Mamoria. And thanks again on jumping on SaaS District today. So, Mohit.
Thank you so much, Akil. Absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again and see you on the next one.